It's Friday, Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. Ha! It's Feedback Friday, and I am in my Twitch position. I couldn't be effed to change it back, so you can see me way down here, and cats might show up. But it is Feedback Friday, the feedbackiest day of the week. It's going to be a little bit different this week because, one, I was short a video this week because I had a massive TMJ flare up. My face is better today than it is in the Patreon video that went out yesterday. That was bad. Patrons get to see my puffed up face. If you were on Twitter, you saw my therapy. Nothing was working. I was going through like muscle relaxants and painkillers and nothing was doing any good. And then Momo sat on my face and purred and I felt better. Someone said that there was science to that like the heat and the pressure and the vibration can actually loosen up stuff like that. So it wasn't just placebo effect, but Dr. Momo. But I do have a Patreon jingle. I have been working on this. I've tried to figure that out. And then I went back and listened to the song and realized there is not much to the song. And that's why I was having trouble with it. So here we are, a little bit of Mariah Carey's All I Want for Christmas Is You Patreonized, okay? Make my wish come true, 'cause all I want on Patreon is you. Ooh. Patreon.com/Leanna K. I had to do the crazy run because it's Mariah Carey and it isn't right. But yeah, that song is weird. And that video is even weirder. It kind of terrified me. But that is not what I'm going to talk about this week. What I'm going to talk about is something that actually didn't come up in a video this week. It came up on Twitter. And a lot of people said, make a video about this. And I'm like, okay, this can be my Feedback Friday. Because Monday is going to be Star Wars. And then Tuesday, I'm just going to put up, I'm going to retweet the holiday video I did when some of the cats were itty bitty kittens. And that's it. Because I need a bit of a break. And then I'm going to do something about, I don't know if it's going to be my 5 favorite games I've played this year. Some of them are going to be from 2018, but the ones I played this year, or something like that. Some kind of year-end recap that I can pre-record or something like that. Because I do need to, I'd say it's a break, but it's not really a break. It's catch up on boss fight and stuff like that. I got to get script 5 finished and then do the costumes over the break so I can start to do production in January. Yay! I'm going to try to my winter hibernation is going to be boss fight stuff. So that's going to be interesting. But what I'm going to talk about today is a conversation that started on Twitter over the latest J.K. Rowling TERF controversy. And this is kind of sad to me because I'm serious when I say latest. J.K. Rowling does have a habit of liking tweets from TERFs. If you don't know what TERF is, it's trans exclusive radical feminist. TERF. And it was somebody actually asked me, is this a pejorative? And it's like, no, that was actually something people called themselves. There is a real issue, a real schism in feminism between people like me who believe that trans women are part of the female experience and deserve to be treated accordingly. And then there are others who believe that the state of womanhood, the state of owning a vagina and uterus is so traumatizing and so oppressive that trans women are appropriating the identity and that they didn't have to grow up being a woman. They don't have all that baggage and therefore they're not really women. I, again, don't agree, but that's the back and forth. So J.K. Rowling, here you go. J.K. Rowling's support of researchers fired for being anti-trans sparks backlash. Now, I want to say I have heard reasonable criticism, valid criticism on both sides of this. I have heard from people who point out that in the ruling, it says the issue was not just that what her personal beliefs are, but that she specifically refuses to call people by their correct gender identity. So if somebody is a trans woman, she continues to refer to them as a man. And what the actual comment was here it is. What I am so surprised at is that smart people who I admire, who are absolutely pro-science in other areas and champion human rights and women's rights, are tying themselves into knots to avoid saying the truth that men cannot change into women because that might hurt men's feelings. So what J.K. Rowling said that got her in trouble was dress however you please, call yourself whatever you like, sleep with any consenting adult who will have you, live your best life in peace and security, but force women out of their jobs for stating that sex is real. I stand with Maya. This is not a drill. Now, as you see down here, whoops, that's the Guardian thing. My bad. Oh, good. It just opened up. It didn't kill it. Judge James Taylor ruled that Forstater's termination was valid since her absolutist beliefs regarding biological sex includes references to a person by the sex she considers appropriate, even if it violates their dignity and or creates an intimidating, hostile, degrading, humiliating, or offensive environment. And now, I have heard some people reasonably criticize J.K. Rowling for being ignorant on what the ruling actually said. I've also heard people, predominantly multiple criminal lawyers, who have said that there need to be reasonable lines so that things aren't so arbitrary that the tiny minority of bad actors in this space can't ruin someone's life. And I totally get, from a defense attorney's perspective, why they're coming at that. That is valid. It is also valid that people have the right to not be part of hostile, humiliating work environments. And I know that at least up here in Canada, we tend to do pretty well finding lines. Like Jordan Peterson still has a job, despite his claims that he would be fired and or put in jail. He's not. So we're doing okay up here. But, you know, then there was that ruling where hair removal salons can't be forced to perform procedures, specifically waxing testicles, that they're not qualified or they don't feel qualified to do. That's not gender discriminatory. So we found a decent balance in this country, but our legal system's a little different than the US one. And so this ties into the video I did on valid criticism versus earnest criticism. I see earnest criticism on both sides here, but I also see valid criticism on both sides here. That doesn't mean that I agree with J.K. Rowling. I disagree. I don't agree that the idea that if you are born with a penis, you're automatically male in your heart. And what's interesting is that I saw this after I read, I love Professor Chris Ferguson's Twitter feed. He has so much interesting stuff there. And he reposted an article he wrote about, because he's a psychologist, gender identity, and how it actually is identity. And that gender is not just a social construct. Many people, the majority of people, profoundly feel male or feel female, and telling them they're not, hello, Momo, emasculating them or defeminizing them has a profoundly traumatic effect on them. And come here, Momo. Yes, I know, we're talking nonsense. Yes, here we go, Momo. Momo doesn't care about this stuff. Yeah. Momo lets kittens do nursing behaviors on him, even though Momo is a boy. Yeah, Momo doesn't care about this stuff. And neither do I. That's the thing. It was a real learning experience for me to read a professional point of view on this, because never in my life have I strongly thought of myself as female. It's weird. Like when you think about this, like my I don't know what the word is. The character I felt represented me most as a kid was Lion-O from the Thundercats. And then as I was older, more in my teenage years, the character I identified with was Beast from the X-Men. And okay, call me a furry if you want. But you know, I identify as a ginger. Took me a while to identify as that. I found the name pejorative for a while, but I got over it. That's what I think of myself. I am a ginger or a natural redhead or whatever you want to call it. I am a gamer. There are other elements of my identity that I feel much more strongly than I am female. I am not as nearly attached to that. Apparently, though, that's not the most common thing. Most people are they're grounded in their gender identity. It's much more a part of who they are. And I realize that you have to be sensitive to that. If it's like identity is a very important, sometimes fragile thing. The idea of who you are is a very tender thing, and you can't stomp all over it. Now, I have a great many trans friends. I do not consider myself non-binary. I do not consider myself trans. Gender non-conforming, yeah, that's undeniable, right, Momo? Right. But I do not consider myself non-binary. I do not consider myself trans. But I realized yesterday, I don't think about it that much. I'm just me. I'm not incredibly defined by being female. I never was. I resented the color pink for a lot of years. Most of my friends growing up, like I had very close female friends, but very close male friends too. It didn't matter to me. I don't feel, I actually feel less comfortable in groups of all women than groups where I'm the only woman. I prefer mixed company. I prefer some women, some men. I do not like things being segregated by gender. Ever. I know sometimes you have to do it, but it really doesn't make me comfortable. At the same time, you know, things like, and maybe it's theater, but, you know, like co-ed changing spaces and things like that, I'm more self-conscious about the other people and making the other people uncomfortable. I don't really care because I don't sort of identify that way. And to realize that, to have it come home that not everybody feels that way was very profound. And that's part of the reason I don't agree with what J.K. Rowling is feeling. It's not a question of, you know, men can't become women. It's that person who is identified by society as male may not actually be male in their brains or in their spirits, right? They might have always been female. And I just did a podcast, and it was about surviving the holidays, but one of the panelists was a brilliantly funny TV writer, but also like social activist. She runs a food insecurity reduction program. Her name's Laura Ray. And she was talking about, because a few years back, she got her gender confirmation surgery right before Christmas. So she was recovering from the surgery at Christmas with her family. She said she was on the couch and it was just sort of happening around her, but she was on like painkiller drugs. So she was it was very happy and very floaty, and a very good Christmas for her. But you know, she jokes that for Christmas, I got a vagina. And the other panelist, who's a cisgender woman, said, I got one for my birthday. It's a very important thing. And so, you know, there's the reasoning there. There's the critical thinking that if feeling right in your body is so important that people undergo heavy-duty surgery to match their brain and their body, then for the majority of people who are born cisgender, that brain-body connection is just as important as well. So it's not good to, to do that to anybody. And so, of course, the backlash to the J.K. Rowling thing confused me even more. I saw this as a response. This is trash. Trans women are women, and trans people deserve the right to self-identify however they need. The end. Now, it's never a very strong argument when you start something with, this is trash. There's no need to go ad hominem. There's no need to go insulting. You can make your point without doing that. But the trans women are women, and trans people deserve the right to identify however they need. Those two things are in conflict. Look again. This is very important, this language, okay? Trans women are women, and trans people deserve the right to self-identify however they need. Are trans women women, or are trans women whatever they need to identify with? Now, I agree that trans women are women. Trans woman equals woman. Cis woman equals woman. There are, in this case, two broad categories of women. But you can't have both. Either trans women are women, or trans women can self-identify however they need. They're not the same thing. And this is one of my issues with the very emotionally driven, loud trans activism that's out there right now. I actually think it's inevitably self-defeating. And here's why I said that. I don't know if this is very readable, but I said, this is where I get confused. Either there are a fixed number of genders, making woman a term that has meaning, or gender is an unlimited spectrum, meaning the term woman is meaningless. Don't attack someone for believing in a binary, then use the language of the binary. Notice I said nothing about whether I agreed with J.K. Rowling or not. It was just, don't attack someone for enforcing a binary and then use the language of the binary. And then I went on, and this is what got people very interested and said, make this video. I said, personally, I subscribe to indigenous 5-gender theory, but I don't terribly care about semantic language. There have to be practical limits on identifiers, but I'm an individualist who has never felt female. I don't spend time agonizing over it. I'm me, that's all. I do believe that intersex is a valid biological category, but that's a trinary instead of a binary. It's not unlimited. Male-female intersex allows everyone to identify an identity without forcing people anywhere. There's no need for unlimited options. Personally, I believe that trans woman and trans man are valid identities that should be affirmed. They're unique experiences. Therefore, the sexes are cis male, cis female, trans female, and intersex. Everyone is valid. Stop screaming. That's my view on it. And I do come from that, from a scientific place, because it is true that indigenous peoples, long before European colonization, recognized, up here in Canada, we call it the concept of two-spirit. So there's indigenous sorting categories include your biological sex and the gender you perform, meaning the role, the gendered role you prefer in society. They combine that into a single identity. So basically, broadly approximating the translation, it's men who do the roles of men, women who do the roles of women, men who do the roles of women, women who do the roles of men, and then people who don't fit neatly into either of those categories. They are split right down the middle. And so what we basically have there is cis men, cis women, trans men, trans women, and intersex or non-binary. And yes, intersex and non-binary are very different things. Somebody can be an intersex person and identify as female. So in that case, they'd end up being just, intersex female, I guess you could claim. I think it's up to every intersex person to determine for themselves whether they consider themselves, a trans woman or a cis woman. Intersex female is probably, or a trans man or trans woman. Intersex man, intersex female. But if you're an intersex person, I think you should absolutely have the right to not choose. Some people feel like they need to, in order to embrace all of their identity, they have to not pick a side. And there's rationality to that. But those 5 options, give everybody a place. So, somebody who is born with a penis but feels female, well, they have a slot. They have a spot in life. That was a terrible pun in a lot of ways. Vice versa, somebody who's born with a vagina but feels male, well, you have a place. And, then people who are born where everything's in alignment, they have a place. And then people who don't feel like any set category is right for them, they have a category. The indigenous people had it right thousands of years ago. I don't know why we can't just adopt that. Now, you have to be very careful. Do not use the term two-spirit unless you are indigenous. That is very upsetting to indigenous people because that tradition was rather forcefully stomped out by the colonizing entities. So you got to be very careful there. But you can give credit where credit's due and say, this just makes the most sense. It serves the purpose of there is not unlimited. We don't have to go spectrum on this. Human experience in and of itself is a spectrum. The spectrum of humanity is the individual. We cannot make gender into a spectrum with an unlimited number of identifiers and pronouns. We can cut it off at 5, okay? Nobody has to make up a bunch of different programs. It's actually perfect because 4 to 6 choices for most people, that's the ideal amount of choice. Too much more than that, people get paralyzed. Fewer than that, people feel like it's not enough choice. So 5 genders works. It's ideal for me. And it's rooted in sound philosophy. It's rooted in sound science. If you wonder what I'm doing, I'm playing with my chili pepper socks. This works for me. So, there are, because then the other thing about just trans women are women. Yeah, I believe trans women are a subset of the feminine experience. Trans women, cis women make up all women. But there are certain things that it's very important someone knows you are a trans woman versus a cis woman. On a less dire but equally important thing, the experiences, the pressures, the struggles of trans women in general are not the same as cis women in general. You cannot replace the two experiences. You can't take a trans woman and expect them to have the same experiences as a cis woman because, well, they had very different experiences growing up. The way they were socialized, the expectations they were under. But also medically, a doctor needs to know that you are a trans woman, you are a trans man on hormones, and then just, especially if you've had confirmation surgery, what they expect to find if they have to do surgery on your abdomen, they got to know what's there. So it's very important we get to a place where trans people can be open and out and not fear trans misogynistic or trans misandrous violence. They can be their authentic selves and be open with their doctors and not have doctors refuse to treat them or not, be refused not be afraid they're going to be refused medical care, because you do have to be honest with medical professionals to get good outcomes. So it's very, very important we get to that place. But we need to get to that place because it's important. And so just going, I'm a woman, without that additional identifier, trans or cis, there are certain instances where that's not enough. I do also think it's important to talk about, and one of the things we did on this podcast that we talked about is how trans women and cis women have very different relationships to certain things because of the different childhood experiences. And both are equally valid. And we had a whole sort of redefining of female roles, like the thing women are expected to do at Christmas. You know, that whole thing, that stereotypical thing of all the women in the kitchen and all the men are sitting on their asses in the living room. Well, Laura said that she before she had, confirmed her gender, before she started living as a woman, she went out in the kitchen so she could surreptitiously be with her own kind, so to speak. She felt more comfortable. She felt like she could be a woman surreptitiously by doing those things. And Michelle, the other panelist, and I were both like, wow, I'm never going to think about this the same way again. Because we both sort of came into it, oh, this is something we have to do. We were so resentful. It was a really cool moment. And that's what dialogue does. And this is trash, doesn't encourage that dialogue. And I really understand that people who do that are speaking through a lot of pain. They feel profoundly invalidated, and so they're lashing out. But I don't think we should make any group of people the enemy, especially around this time of year. Christmas is actually kind of great for me because I don't have that strong sense of what Christmas is supposed to be the same way. It's, do I get to see people I like, and do I get a bit of a break? Is it a break from the routine? Do we get to be a little bit nicer to each other? Yeah, I'm down. I don't have to go through the beats of we must do this at this time and go this place and get these things and everything like that. It's so great to break through that. But I do get a little bit like, really, guys, you're calling someone trash right before Christmas? Come on. It's an excuse to be nicer to each other. You can object to what J.K. Rowling said without calling her trash. But also, you cannot say all women are women and then say gender is a spectrum with an unlimited amount of things. I think we need to start separating the idea of people are born with a penis, a vagina, ovaries, or testes, or some combination of those. That is fact. Being born with a vagina, meaning you feel like a woman in your head, that's not necessarily fact. That's the difference. And so this idea that biological sex is real for most people. That's true. Biological sex is a reality for everyone, even if you're intersex, because that's a reality. But what the original researchers said didn't stop there. It wasn't the everybody has some sort of biological sex that is real. It's that men can't become women. That's on the line. Now, I do wanna give a bit of food for thought regarding how real gender and sex are, and how plausible it is that we're just going to be able to move away from gender completely. And it's borrowing from racialization theory. The theory is, and this connects to privilege. It's different language to talk about something similar. But the idea that non-whiteness, especially blackness, is a state forced upon people who are black. They can't choose to not be seen as black by the rest of the world. And so that is very real for them. And so the reality of gender, the reality of sex, is when somebody sees somebody, they assume to be a man. When somebody sees someone, they assume to be a woman. They expect things from that person based on their gender. And that is very real. A lot of men still feel intense pressure to repress their emotions. And it really messes those men up. A lot of women feel intense pressure to be nicer and more other-oriented and all that stuff. That may not be who they are naturally, like in their core. I'm sure shit not. I'm a very giving person, but I don't consider myself nice. I consider myself fair. You might notice. Watch my Twitch channel sometime. You'll see what I say while I'm playing games. You will see why I identify more with gamer than woman. But I get way more shit for saying things that any guy would if he said the exact same thing. That's fact. That's real. So, gendered perception, what you have to experience, what you have to live with because of your sex, because of your gender, that's real. That's not imaginary. That is real for people's experience. You know, the fact that women are more likely to experience a more profound form of sexual harassment, but men are more likely to be physically assaulted by strangers or, you know, non-romantic partners. That's real. Those are the pressures. Those are the realities that come with those gender roles. We can't just say, "Oh no, it's imaginary. We have to stop talking about that." No, that's real. The same way a black person can't just decide not to deal with the stigma of being black in America or a lot of other places. That's real. That stuff is real. There's a reality of how parents treat girls differently than boys. You know, and there is no... And on the one hand, people who are sort of, you know, intersex, when it's like, well, if I'm neither, how do I behave? Some people find that very freeing. Some people find that very confusing. All this stuff is real, right? This stuff is real. And that's why I think, again, 5 genders, way easier for somebody to find something that fits for them that's socially acceptable. That's why I think it's backed in science. It's backed in tradition. We can do this. I think this is feasible. It stops a lot of this stupid fighting. But please, 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 again, pick your side. If all women are women, trans women, cis women are women, then being a woman is a valid state. You have to choose. If there is woman, there is man. There may also be intersex. But that is acknowledging that there is a binary or a trinary. You cannot say, "Oh no, it's a spectrum," and start using phrases like women. You have to pick. Otherwise, you're not only confusing people, but people do have the right to validly criticize the disconnect in your argument. You're not being consistent. So I'm going to leave it there. If you like this sort of stuff, this video may get demonetized. So please consider becoming a patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or there's a PayPal link in the description box below if you just want to do a one-time thing on videos like this that are likely to get demonetized. If you do appreciate videos like this, because YouTube doesn't, kick a few bucks. Send me a Christmas present. All I want at Christmas is bucks. No, I'm kidding. But that's not true. I actually hate gift cards. That's the podcast too. But yeah, if you can send a few bucks one time via PayPal, I'd really appreciate it, because I like doing these videos. People enjoy these videos. People find them helpful. YouTube won't pay me for them. So that's it. I am going to, like I said, a video on Monday. I am going to be doing a Twitch stream on Monday as well instead of Tuesday, because Tuesday is Christmas Eve and most of my regulars ain't around. So that's what we're going to do. It will be the exciting conclusion of Death Stranding. There are only 2 more hours-ish left in the game of cutscenes. So we're going to be showing that. And then in the new year or on Boxing Day, we're going to be moving on to one of my favorite action games ever, The Darkness. I've got it right here. We're going to do it. The Darkness. I love this game. Remember I said I was not really a typical female? I never really felt female. Jackie Estacada! Yeah, we're going to do it. Okay, everybody, thanks for watching.